Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us in another of our APPI Focus on ARV Learn by Doing webinars. In these, I always have some related topic which I believe can assist some, at least, uh, in their ARVing, remote viewing, and in fact, whole psychic life. The topic today will be now moment, free choice, and inertia in the UCC. So here's the outline for the next probably 3 hours or so. The first half hour will be a tutorial, hints for newbies and oldbies. The next half hour will be the topic I just mentioned, and that actually will be about an hour. And then we'll take a half an hour to do feedback for a month-long earlier prediction, the one that started a month ago and just ended, frankly, yesterday. And then we will all take an hour to do a new month-long prediction that'll start today and go until a day before the next webinar. All of these webinars occur on the first Wednesday of the month. So that's the plan. So let's jump in and talk about ARV, associative remote viewing. In linear time, and you can see the linear scale here, it in fact starts with a remote viewing session. And the tasking is basically describe and or sketch your feedback target. So this is when you're putting on your remote viewing hat and you remote view the target that you will see, experience, do a feedback session with in the future. And that's over here. So during your feedback session, you actually very much do the same thing. You describe and sketch your feedback target. The big difference is you now have the target in front of you. You have the transcript that you did in front of you. So the target is now the truth point, if you will. You know exactly what your target is. This is the time where you can always learn, you can improve, very significant. And we will be doing, you'll be seeing feedback sessions from a month ago. So the truth point, of course, it makes sense that that would be particularly significant in precognition because this is what you're trying to describe. Now, in between is where the associative remote viewing comes in. Notice this is just standard remote viewing. You're remote viewing a single target. And, you know, there are people who will do that, looking for missing people, where's a person located, things of that sort. But there's always in between an analysis section. In associative remote viewing, I want you to understand this analysis section because this is where you make generally, and this is where our focus is. There are other things you can do, but our focus has been on making investment decisions. And that's done basically by working with financials. It's a binary ARV system which predicts up or down for the financial instrument in question. Now, we always use stops and limits, so it's a little more complex, though not much, than saying, hey, at the opening, will this stock go up or down between the opening and close? We put specific stops and limits in. However, notice in all binary ARV, there are two possible targets. Now here's where the associations come in. One target is associated with up. Guess what the other target is associated with? It's associated with a down price move. The actual target shown during the feedback session, so what you'll see here, will always, and always indeed is capitalized, will always be associated with the actual up or down outcome. So the price movement basically chooses which of these two possible targets you'll see here. And that is the one and only target. Here, there are two possible targets, just because there might be an up move or down move. But from the standpoint of remote viewing, you just describe and sketch what you see here. But the analyst who is looking at this can make a judgment about which one of these two possible targets is a really good match to your transcript. And in between here, an investment can be made, because this occurs before the market opens, say 6:30 a.m. Pacific time, and the investment then can be up or down, and the outcome will always be known by 1 p.m. Pacific time. So we use, as I said, stops and limits, and those are usually met during the day because the distance is chosen that happens. But if it doesn't, at 1 o'clock, then we'll use the up and down. So by the end of each market day, when we do this, there will always be an outcome of up or down, which then chooses the specific target. That's ARV. I will say more about it, but that's what it's all about. The associations have to do with up or down movements. We do it in sports where it can be over, under, team A, team B. Lots of times the questions are put in the form of yes, no, but it is always binary, and the association is with the two possible pictures, up or down. Each possible picture has one association. Now, in terms of really getting this and hopefully helping you do it better and better, it's really important to recognize that precognition in kind of a real practical sense begins with the feedback session. And that's because you know the truth point. And what we're doing is purposeful precognition. It's not like, say, a deja vu. It's not like somebody calls you on the phone who you haven't heard from for 20 years, and before the phone rings, you think of this person. You know, how does that happen? Those are types of precognition. Almost all of us have precognitive experiences of one sort or another, but most are not done on purpose. This is done on purpose. And the idea that it begins with the feedback session is so important, because we have feedback sessions. Lots of people make predictions and they might never know if it's right or wrong. They might never follow up. Here, we always follow up. You always get a feedback picture. Now, the cue is, as I indicated, describe and sketch a feedback target, but we're interested in people who are in this for the long term. You know, there's not only a lot to learn, but you can get better and better at doing this over time. So we need to have what we call a coordinate. Some people call it a transcript reference number. And I actually like that, because that's just what this is. This 6-digit coordinate or transcript reference number does refer to this feedback target here. So it's uniquely associated with that target. So that's the cue. Now, I've referred to this as a photo, and sometimes I'll do that. And at one level, it is indeed a photo. But I'd like to have all of you think of it as a photo site. And the difference is a photo site indeed refers to the site location at the specific time the photo was taken. But you see, consciousness can get more than you would get just out of a photo. Sounds, for example, if this happened to be the target without all the writing, you kind of get a sense that there's, a sound as it's moving through the water. And your consciousness can pick that up. Now, that is something which, in fact, is implied by the photo. And that's fine. Some people just want to look at the photo and what is implied. But just to keep it interesting and to connect up with standard remote viewing, where in fact your consciousness goes to some specific site and describes it there, we have this idea that, yes, your consciousness is expected to gather information from the photo, colors, shapes, etc., what it can get from the photo, and your consciousness can move to that site at the time the photo was taken and describe and or sketch what can be readily verified or inferred from the photo. So your consciousness, your subconscious mind is going to give you all of the kinds of information that you get as a remote viewer. Now that includes things like, which I think are very important, and that's why I listed it first impression gestalts, the big picture, water, maybe 3, brown, white, moving. Oh, I hear a sound. The kind of things that you get, big picture stuff. So those are first impression gestalts. And then you start getting all the kind of visuals. You get more detail. You can get the sounds. You get smells, taste, tactile sensations, emotions. You might pick up ideas. All of your normal senses, your magnificent nervous system is active, and your subconscious mind is able to communicate through all of your normal senses. And so that's what it does when you do your remote viewing session. And from that, you generate your transcript, which has on it all the information which your subconscious gave you. Now, so the target is the feedback photo site. We see over and over again in a pretty good fraction of the people, but maybe not even as much as 50%, but what's called beginner's luck. However, wanting to be in this for the long term, and I hope most of you would like to do this, increase your precognitive abilities, which are very closely related to all of your psychic abilities. So practice, practice, practice is very important, like a doctor or a shaman. Now, ARV is very unique to each viewer, and I've decided today to actually have you do a little exercise. So go get some pencil, pen, and one sheet of paper. You probably already have that since you know you were going to be doing a prediction later. And what I'm about to do for you is not precognition. So be very clear. This is going to be just how do you describe and sketch something that you see briefly. In remote viewing, things tend to flash relatively quickly, actually more quickly than I'm going to give you in this exercise. And that's part of the training, is to learn how to gather that up and put it on a transcript. So I'm focusing your attention now on what are the big picture first impression gestalts you get. And you might get 2, 3, and just put those down on the sheet of paper It might be words. It might be a sketch. And if it's not, if it's words, fine. Add a sketch, and then whatever else you get. Okay. And for your newbies, I want to show you this chart before we get into the exercise, which gives you a sense of the level of words that the subconscious uses generally, especially in 1, 2, 3-page sessions, um, to communicate with you. They're the kind of words which maybe, I don't know what age, 3, 4, 5-year olds, they have enough experience. And even now, your experiences are at the level of these kind of words. And these are just what your nervous system can pick up, all of these, textures, colors, smells. It could be in any of these categories. But, we don't want you to name things. You don't want to guess and say the Eiffel Tower. You might say something like tall, um, hollow, triangular, metal. It's those level of words that are in here, and you in fact can get emotions. You can pick up motion, any the specific geometry. You can get pretty much everything, and so in addition to words, sketches, and usually you'll get a partial image uh, at first, and you get an image here, an image there. Uh, so, okay, so that's the level of things which in the exercise we're about to do, um, uh, you should expect. Okay, so I'm about to click this now. It's going to be on for 1 second, and then I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to generate a transcript, which is from something you're seeing right now directly. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. You can see you've had a minute, and you probably already have a great deal of information down on your transcript in terms of the first impression gestalt, some sort of initial sketch. But I'm going to give you more time to see what else you can pick up, and that might not come at all from memory. That might come from your subconscious. Um, but whatever you sort of get and the senses from your subconscious, put on your sheet of paper. Okay, why don't we stop now? Um, and I will now show you the picture again. And how did you do? Why don't you write something in the chat box? Did you get there was a person? Did you get there was water? Everybody's a little different, and people will get different things. So usually at the Gestalt level, there's a good match. Did you get brown? Some of you brand newbies generated your first transcript. It wasn't precognitive, but it was a first transcript. The jaggedness down here, the fact that the water is really rough here and making noise down here is something which your subconscious could certainly pick up. I don't know if any of you were able to pick up any of that. Okay, very good, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing. But you didn't get the person, which is interesting. Ah, very nice. Yeah, very nice. Flying over the canyon, flowing water. And in remote viewing, the same thing often happens. You'll get a lot of what's there and you'll miss something which, when you see it as feedback, is something major, like you didn't see the subject there. Now, we can make excuses why, in this case, the colors are all dark, but certainly his hands out and all that. Did any of you get this white, this is a bungee jump. Did anybody get this white bungee jump stuff? Gold in the water, that's good. Okay. So that just sort of gives you a sense when looking at something directly. Okay, very good. Outdoors, yep. Flying skeleton. Okay, now notice all of you are getting different results. That's one of the messages here. Even when we know it's the same picture and you all looked at it for 1 second, we get different results. It is very personal. Now, I want to now give you examples of precog transcripts. So all of these are standard precognitive transcripts using the basic online system that we have for the same target, to show you how different people just simply with their remote viewing precog senses pick up different things even after they're doing feedback on the same picture. Now, of course, they did the feedback later, but there's an entanglement with the remote viewing session that allows them to get the information that they get. So this is one example of a precog transcript for the same target you guys did. Now, there are a few things here I want to point out to your newbies. The Oldbies know what AOL is. This is actually a very important concept because it gets at the issue of what is it that your intellectual, ego, day-to-day mind adds. It's a player. The fact is, its really only job is to take information from the subconscious. So that's what this was information which he got from his subconscious, and put it down on the paper. However, there's a different feeling when the intellect, the ego, gets involved. And in this case, notice, got vehicle here, not certainly exactly right, but hey, this has some signs of a vehicle, and it's got these lines in there, and the circling stuff might or might not have anything to do with the water, but notice here, spiraling downward, concave from above. wood colored. And I would say that's pretty good. I would say that's wood colored, right? So this is what the sub all by itself um, gave, entangling with the feedback target. Causation energy. Okay, that's pretty good too. So this is one typical session that this person did. Now let me show you another one. I notice I always put a coordinate on here. This is probably page 2 because the name isn't on here. Usually we have the name if it's only a one-page target, but you've got the date. Okay, here's another one. Notice here they picked up the valley, cavernous nature, which the other one didn't pick up at all. Channel flow. The words Valley of the Rift came out of nowhere up through the subconscious. And this is how it works. And that's what you learn to listen to. Learning to listen to the subconscious is the skill, the art, the self-training, because it's your subconscious communicating with you. And notice here these lines, which look, I think a lot like this. It almost looks like a planter box, but, it certainly looks a lot like that as well. The whole idea is you just report what your sub provides. You don't think, analyze, just report. Now here's one that's a little harder to read, but here an AOL, dark-skinned man dressed in white. Kind of reversed that, but certainly got the black and white. High tent, a lot of AOLs here. And one of the things about AOLs, and not too much, well, there's beige. I guess I would call that beige. I don't know if it's hot. Can't tell. Some black, but some misses too. It's not 100%. What I really want to point out to you here, and it's interesting that this person called it an AOL. And the thing about AOLs are usually they are not accurate. And when I do analysis, I tend to ignore them unless I see some reason where they might be right on. Like in this case, this AOL says sound of fabric flapping in the wind. So if you were a judge and you saw that, you would give this match a high score. Because of that, because it's got a person, it's clearly captured the person here. Okay. Now, here's the last one I'm going to show you also. Now, there were others that were not very good. I'm not showing you those. I want you to get the idea of how the sub can, in fact, do a great job of communicating the information, but each person is unique. Notice here, has something, the drum, here's the sound, okay, but now it's with the drum. An analyst might or might not make that connection, but, knowing what we do about the flapping, we'd make it. And here's something here with all of these pokey things coming out, which I believe was here, and notice the AOL, porcupine. This is what the sub gave them, a picture like this with stuff coming out. Just put it on the paper. Don't analyze at all. You want to keep that part of you out of it, and it often comes in, and so you simply write it down on the right side of the paper. Okay, and again, I don't see any green here, yellow. These are not 100%, and yet person with an S, wasn't sure if it was one or more. In fact, there are at least two. You see a hand here. So you can just see the way the subconscious communicates, unique to each person, and maybe even better than you did when looking at it for a second. Your subconscious has such remarkable capability, and this is just a marvelous, really, I think, cutting edge, exciting way to activate it more and more. Okay, just report what your sub provides. Okay, that is my summary of ARV with examples. I've been using the same example for a very long time because I still have not come up with better ones making the points I made with you. If there are any questions, okay, I'm looking at the chat box now. Yeah, Magic, if you will send me an email, because by the time this is over, I will forget, just send me an email asking me to send you that word list, and I'll be happy to do so to you or anybody else. Okay, let me see if there are any questions that were put in here. And you guys can turn on your mic. Flying over Canyon Orange. Yeah, you guys, in that 1 minute one, 2 minute one, you got a lot. Okay. Okay, very good. Okay, so then no questions or comments. I'll move on. I hope you understand ARV now. Ultimately, the best way to quote, understand, appreciate, get it, is to do it. And of course, that's what we provide in app is plenty of prediction groups so that you can do this for free, and then you get it at a much deeper level and you begin to activate that communication channel with your sub.
Marty,
Okay.
Marty?
Yep. Pat, that's you. Yep, I see you.
Thank you. Can you tell me what AOL stands for again? I didn't quite.
Yeah, maybe I didn't even say it. Analytical overlay.
Thank you.
So you understand the analytical is the intellectual thinking part as opposed to just receiving the information from the sub.
Right. Okay, thank you very much.
Good. Any more questions, comments? Okay, so now let's go on to now moment, free choice, and inertia in the UCC. This is, I believe, the third one in the series where I brought in this idea of inertia and other concepts, expectation, intention, other different concepts connected with the fact that if you think about your life, so much of it is simply done in what would be called inertia. Your heart beating, your lungs, even most of the choices you do are very much the same as similar choices that you've done before. Now, you did that freely. You weren't coerced, but it's inertia. And all of this takes place in what I've been calling this universe of collective consciousness, which it's like the Akashic record. It's like Jung's collective unconscious. It's the place that contains everything that conscious has access to, that consciousness touches, past, present, and future. So it's the big kahuna in the consciousness world. It's at the base of everything. I'll say a little more about it, but I've done so many webinars on it in the past that I'm not going to focus on that either. What I want to focus on is the real importance, which is totally underestimated by almost everybody, in my opinion, about the now moment. So I really want us to get an appreciation about the now moment. Okay, so here's a dictionary definition. A very brief period of time, right? Moments, is that a second? Is that a half a second? It's sort of undefined, but it's like now. She was silent for a moment. before replying. You know, synonyms, a little while, a short time, a bit, a minute. A minute, second, not really, but okay. Some might say an exact point in time, this moment. You always remember the moment they met. So, you know, it's got a little fuzziness associated with it. I was waiting for the right moment, a particular stage in the development, one of the great moments in aviation history, maybe the Wright brothers' whole endeavor. Sometimes a moment can actually be quite long when you look at things from a historical perspective, or their first flight. Okay, so a moment has that kind of vagueness around it. But now I want to focus you on the now moment. Okay, the usual definition is at the present time or moment. So the now moment are very closely connected in our usual vernacular. Where are you living now? Okay. The usual definition has synonyms like at the moment, at present, just now, right now, at the present time, at the present moment, at this time, at this moment in time, currently, here and now. And by the way, the now is much more important than the here, because the now is always with you no matter where you are. Now, here's what I want to talk about in the next several slides. The deep meaning of now in the context that we're talking about, which is in the context of deep consciousness, which includes psychic consciousness, but consciousness is fundamental. We've given lots of lectures on that. We're giving workshops on that in Las Vegas. Consciousness is fundamental to everything. It's at the base of everything. And your life, and I just hope I can transmit this to you, your life is a connected series of now moments of personal conscious awareness. Sometimes I'll just say consciousness, conscious. But if you think about it, the now moment, right now, what you're experiencing right now, looking at the screen, listening to me, I just clapped my hands. Hopefully you heard that. Go from moment to moment to moment to moment. Each of those are what is critical to get, because the past is gone. But what was it? Well, it was previous now moments. It was a series of those now moments. What's the future? It's going to be now moments. When you do anything, what do you get to do it in? You only get to take action. You only get to make choices. You only get to experience things in a now moment, just like the ones you're experiencing now. So now moments are absolutely critical. This universe of collective consciousness. So this blue thing contains everything consciousness touches, everything consciousness is aware of, past, present, and future. And indeed, there's no boundary. Because if you were to try to imagine something outside here, as soon as you imagined it, thought about it, had a glimpse of it, it goes inside. So this is like a circle without a boundary. Very much like our physical universe. There's no end. It's just there. Okay. So one of the things which is in, and I use the word thing because it's sort of the most generic term I can think of for things that are in here, because everything is in here. But your now moment. So this is one now moment right there. This one right now, it's in there. Oh, the next one, it's in there. Well, guess what? Your life can be viewed as a connected series, a tangled series of now moments of personal conscious awareness. You know, we don't usually think about it that way, but I think it makes sense, right? Um, if you get down to conscious life, your conscious life. Hey, there are other people out there. We know that. But let's focus on your conscious life. All of those experiences occur in sequence of now moments, your personal now consciousness. So this, in a way, is your life story in terms of now moments. Now, and most of us, I think, are more comfortable and can get our heads around events. But what are events? Events are just a series of now moments that were made meaningful by you. In other words, this webinar, okay, this webinar had a start at some time. Maybe you were getting rid of it, getting ready for it before, and when it ends, you'll still have some entanglements with it. It's a connected event. During the next, couple of hours here, the connections will be strong, but there may be connections earlier and that. But this is kind of an event, but it's an event which is defined by you. It's meaningful. This is where I think this word meaning is so powerful, but it's you who consciously brings meaning to this, and maybe subconsciously sometimes, but it's you who bring the meaning to these events. Your remote viewing session, that each one of those are events. When you do your feedback session, it's an event. The exercise we did was an event. That's a connected series of nows. Okay, all of your life events, your life story, are in the UCC with varying intensity. And I had to say probably here. I certainly don't understand. I'm not sure anybody truly understands this intensity factor, but it's there. Traumatic experiences, it's like stuff you'll never forget. And they'll have triggers which will bring them back into the moment. And the triggers, might be pretty subtle. Boring events, they're harder to remember. You're not interested in remembering them. So I think the intensity has to do with meaning, importance, and emotions that you supply. But it's clear that these events, just like the now moments, have some sort of other factor, an intensity factor that's involved. Okay, I want to relate this again to your life. I've already said your life is a connected series of personal conscious events. So now each one of these things represents events. Okay, hey, there's breakfast. Here's getting ready and looking up the link to come to this webinar. Back here someplace might be, when you were a child. They're there. Over here is you 10 years from now. You're having breakfast 10 years from now. You're having all kinds of events. You have memories of your past. Like we're going to be doing an RV session, or this was actually meant to be in general. When you do an RV session, there's an event. Then you do your feedback tomorrow. There's your feedback session event. All of these events are here and there in your life. So we know you can have memories of your past. We know you have memories of your future. Probably wouldn't be here if you didn't recognize that precognition is real. And so these entanglements through time are just natural. It's the way our universe works. There's entanglement, which some people like to say going backwards in time, retrocausality, different words for this, but indeed it's real. Now, memories often have these meaningful triggers, activating entanglement to a past or future event. One of the things that each of us as ARVers are looking for is to have more and more triggers which entangle us at the remote viewing session time to the actual target, to the feedback target, the feedback session. And certainly the coordinate, the target reference number, is a very good trigger, and that's what most of us use most of the time. But there are other things which you can do. You could add emotions. Um, I have actually recommended taking a bite of a cookie or an apple during your remote viewing session, and during the feedback session, finish off the cookie or apple. So there are other things you can do, but the really good viewers, they don't do anything, it seems, but take a coordinate, and that's enough for the subconscious to give them all the information they need. Very important point here, because I'm connecting this to your life. In the UCC, you have, and this seems pretty clear because the trigger for something of an event that happened to you, you know, that same thing wouldn't trigger it for anybody else. These things are personal. And it seems pretty clear that there's a personal signature for you in the UCC. It's almost like all of your events are clustered together in some way, entangled together by your unique DNA genetic code. And notice I say, for example, I am sure there are other things which are part of your personal signature. And as time goes on, I suspect your personal signature gets broader, more robust. Your history, what you actually did in the future, could be part of your personal signature. But it's all connected to these personal events. So the fact that in this universal collective consciousness, which feeds the physical world, it feeds what goes on in your remote viewing session and in your feedback session, in your whole life, in virtually everything you do comes from this UCC, because consciousness is fundamental. What you know about the physical world comes from consciousness, and you integrate it into what's an objective world. And one of the things which you know is there are other conscious people out there. And that's important to get. Sometimes when I talk and others talk like this, it's almost like the physical world is not real in some way. And that's not true. The fact that we know and can connect with other conscious people through things like telepathy, I mean, that's kind of remarkable. And that's one of the beauties of consciousness is fundamental, that all these other conscious people have their life stories down in the UCC as well, and they can be connected. So they have their own unique signature. The objective world, the objective universe, I believe, consists of those things which we, all the conscious people that we're connected with, and we're connected with them, you know, in so many different ways nowadays. You know, thousands of years ago, it was basically maybe your tribe, minor interactions with other tribes, and Mother Nature, but nevertheless, you had an objective universe. You know, your tribe would all go out looking for food, and you found it in the same place. So there was an objective universe. Nowadays, the objective universe is really, really broad, including conjectures of things that we maybe do not all agree with. And so what's an objective world has what I call a fuzzy boundary. It's really not clear, but 99% of it certainly is. Here's some quotes. I love quotes. the whole objective universe is created, ordered by our perception and by our sense of self. The sense of self is where it starts. Consciousness is fundamental. Your consciousness is fundamental to your sense of the whole universe. So I like that quote. Here's Deepak Chopra, and basically saying, you are the universe, discovering your cosmic self and why it matters. And it getting to the point where you can recognize that in a very real sense, your life story, all of those conscious moments, okay, that's your life story connected together, but they are entangled to other conscious people that you've touched, you've read about, that have come into your conscious awareness. All of that, including those entanglements, is indeed your universe. And then this is from Jung. Synchronicity, which was the word I think he coined, but certainly he made famous, reveals the meaningful connections between the subjective and objective world. So that's, I've used a lot more words here, but this is sort of the summary of it all, which I hope just helps get it deeper into you. And it's all connected to your personal conscious awareness of the now moment, the now events. That's what is the fundamental, I'll use the word atom. The Greeks had this idea of the smallest thing which could explain everything else. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the now moment is that. Now, we hear a lot about multiple universes. There's so much talk about that going on right now. And I want to give you my perception of that in this context of consciousness being fundamental and the universe of collective consciousness. Multiple universes that matter. Again, mostly they're talked about in kind of the physical sense, that somehow there's physical multiple universes out there. That makes no sense to me now, because we, I hope, understand that the only universe that is anything we can know anything about is the personal kind of universe. However, in the UCC, there are more than the personal universe. Okay, wait, let me just go back, because I want to explain here a very important distinction. You have your life story, but down in the, and that is all the collection of your conscious moments. But down in the UCC, there's more than that. Not only other people's moments, there are what I call probable universes. This is what the multiple universe theory is connecting up with, because there are indeed other probable ways your life could have gone based on where you are right now. There are different probable futures. You're only going to live one of those. Okay? And that's a very important distinction. So there are personal probable universes. It is very important, in my opinion, to appreciate that your personal consciousness, your personal nows, your personal events are also in the UCC as your personal conscious reality. Those are your actual conscious universe. Okay, and that's entangled with others. I just want you to understand this is broader than just you, but we're focused on you now. So you have probable universes, and then you have the one that is your actual life story. That's very important to get. You know, this is the one that you're living, past, present, future. But and notice all of this in this model is down there already. Otherwise, you really couldn't do precognition and some of the marvelous things that we see people do. And we saw some of those with Tom McNair on Monday, where he just gets things exactly right, which he doesn't see until the future. Just shows that his conscious moments were out there already, and he just created them and had to live it. But could have gone a different way. And I want to give you some more examples. Why does this intellectual mumbo jumbo really matter? And it matters because you have access to your personal, most probable future events. And this can be used to create a new personal conscious event, which was not among, say, the most probable. But if you get a sense of the most probable, you might want to change it. And that's what people often say. They say they changed their future. And in a real sense, they did. But this model, and I think it's important to understand it this way, this model basically says that if you see a very negative outcome in your future, what you're seeing is something like a most probable future event, right? It hasn't happened yet. You haven't had that in your conscious moment. You know, there are people who have not gotten on airplanes because they had a dream or they had this just overwhelming sense that the plane was going to crash. Guess what? The plane crashed. Now, they didn't get on that flight. That's the distinction between the most probable future and then the personal conscious event. They were off the plane when they heard the plane crash. So that's just a very important distinction. So they didn't really quite change the future. They changed which part of the probable futures they, in fact, were going to experience in a real live sense. So I don't know. This is actually a relatively new insight to me, and I hope I'm sharing it with you because it's a different way of looking at consciousness as fundamental, in that you have these most probable futures and then you have what you actually experience. Both of them are in the UCC, and you are the creator of all your now moments. But being able to use your psychic sense to see the most probable future is a rather nice capability. Okay, one more, just to hopefully help you get this even deeper. Changing the future is really creating a different, specific, probable future as your reality. This is stories which I've heard over and over again from many different people as almost a contradiction, a conundrum. And I think this approach at least brings some light on it. Let's say an RVer reports a specific future and time for a robbery and murder in a store, 7-Eleven, some sort of store. They report it to the police, and this person is well enough known, and they're becoming more and more people now who the police listen to. And the police go and they catch the robbers outside the stores with their masks on, guns are around. Clearly, they stopped it before they got into the store. But notice the prediction was formerly a miss. You know, they predicted there was going to be a robbery and a murder, and there wasn't. And this, of course, is a very good thing. But you see, what I would say what they were doing is the remote viewer was describing a most probable future within the UCC using basic inertia. This word inertia, if everything were going the way it was now and there were no external forces involved, the store would have been robbed. Okay? That was probably the most likely event, something right around the store being involved. I don't know why, but I want to give an example of throwing a ball up in the air, and it takes an arc. And that arc is in the UCC. The UCC certainly knows about all the physics equations, Newton's equations, quantum mechanics, whatever. However, what if a gust of wind suddenly came in? Ooh, the prediction of where that might fall would be dramatically changed. So there really are only probable futures from the time I throw that ball. But that goes into a much bigger sense in terms of the things the UCC knows as inertia, the things that you have in your life, which just going about your life in a normal way, it's pretty likely that certain things will happen, unless you take something specific which creates a different inertia. It changes the inertia. You need F equal ma is Newton's law. You need an additional force to change that inertia. In this case, the RVer reporting this to the police was a different act, which changed the inertia of that situation. So there's a clear distinction between a most probable future with UCC inertia and the actual consciousness future that was experienced by everybody involved, including the robbers. Okay. Are there any questions on that? That was a lot. I hope it wasn't too intellectual. I suspect it was the first time for some of you that you even got exposed to this difference of probable futures being there, available, versus the actual conscious future in your life, which you will eventually experience. For Carl Jung, it was the collective unconscious. Yeah, I don't know what I said, but of course that's true. Conscious was individual, unconscious was collective or universal. Okay, DeHall, I agree with that. And I don't like the word unconscious because un implies not, like there's no consciousness there. And the term I'm using, universe of collective consciousness, is intended to be very descriptive of what this is. But it's been called by many different names and many different cultures. So, I mean, it's not that it's a new idea. Okay, let's talk now about free choice. Freedom of choice describes an individual's opportunity and autonomy be able within himself to perform an action selected from at least two available options, unconstrained by external parties. So that's one definition. Here's another one. Choice in philosophy, a corollary of the proposition of free will, the ability voluntarily to decide to perform one of several possible acts or to avoid action entirely. Excuse me. I like this, to avoid action entirely, because that's inertia. But we all have kind of the sense of free choice. Now, there are often debates, especially when precognition comes up. How could you have free choice if indeed you're able to know in such great detail some future random, by the normal sense of the word random, events, like randomly choosing a photograph out of 100 million possible, and a person will describe it exactly. The very fact that he can do that in his collective now moments, in my mind, shows you not only that free choice is there, because he's choosing to do that in now moments, but in addition to that, it shows this entanglement through time, which is a creative process. In a sense, the future is, not in a sense, the future is already out there. Your now moments are already out there, or this 1 out of a million great description of a photo site, it just wouldn't be possible. But it does not imply that you don't have free choice. You do, and you know it, and you know it in the now moment. I mean, there are very few things, I think, that you are more certain of. First is that you have this conscious moment. That's where consciousness is fundamental. You know, nobody can doubt your current conscious moment. Personally, no one can personally doubt their personal conscious moment. But the other thing that you know in that moment is that if you have choices, you're making those choices. Now, is it influenced by the past? Sure. But that doesn't mean it's still not a free choice for you. And furthermore, we now know that the future influences the present moment. So yes, there are influences on you, basically, which is in the form of information, but you do have two or more available options, unconstrained by external parties, and you get to make that free choice. Now, many of you have heard of Tom Campbell's big toe. It's a very extensive, excellent, frankly, discussion of theory of everything. The toe, big toe, TOE, is theory of everything. Basically, what I'm giving you here, in a sense, is part of a theory of everything too. He and I disagree on what I just said. He would say the best you can do is describe the most probable future. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I totally disagree with him on that. We've discussed it. And for the reasons I gave you, the 1 out of a million picture, for example, that's described so well, says to me that the actual future feedback target is already out there and is entangled with your now moment. Mankind's greatest gift is that we have free choice. And that's from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who is big, certainly one of the founders of the near-death experience world. You are free to choose, but you're not free from the consequence of your choice. And accepting responsibility for that is so important in living our lives. Yes, you are free, but as soon as you make a choice, you then go on to the next moment, having that choice there, having it have whatever entanglements are involved with that choice, leading to other free will choices, et cetera, et cetera. So it is part of your life story. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. Kind of like that. That gets to the idea of sort of the eternal now. Maybe I'm extending it a little farther, but all you do is make choices in the now, but your whole life story is the collection of all of those. And so it's the collection of all those choices that make you. Free choice among sense alternatives is self-creation of your life. And that happens in the now. You can only take action. You can only think about things. You can only do anything in a now. And, you know, we don't just usually think about that. We plan, but guess where the planning happens? It happens in the now. You know, you're planning for a future event. You're planning a child's wedding. And that's going to happen in the future now. But all the choices that you make before that, when you're thinking about it, you're probably visualizing it, planning it in any way that you do it, those all happen in the now. And then on that wonderful wedding date, you get to experience it all. So at the bottom there, I changed things. Free choice only occurs in your now moments. We said that before. But one choice is dominated by inertia. One of the definitions of free will said you're free to do nothing. Absolutely, that's one of your choices. So your ego personality can sense some of the alternatives, and a good portion of our decisions are based on. We live our life. Come on. Nothing wrong with ego, nothing wrong with the intellect. In fact, it's terrific. Anything that could get us, you know, to the moon and all that good stuff, all the latest science we have, the intellect is terrific. The fact that you live a life, and our lives are pretty complicated, is terrific. So that's really a good thing. However, your subconscious mind senses more. It just seems to have a sense of all alternatives, all the probable universes, and it's able to pick out the most probable future of some events. So that's where this idea of probable universes come in, and there are just lots of examples where people have taken advantage of that. Russ Targ says it saved his life. He was on a motorcycle, and around the bend was something right in the middle of his lane. And he just sensed it, knew it. He went over to one side and just went right past it. But if it wasn't that he sensed that there was something there and acted on it, he thinks he'd be dead. Okay, so all of this is actualized in conscious moments. Okay, your subconscious mind can sense all alternatives. Now let's connect this to ARV a little bit. So the actual feedback target plus the other non-actualized target are the two alternatives. We just have to acknowledge that. And people don't always want to accept this, but frankly, your subconscious knows about both of these. If it wants to describe the other one for whatever reason within you, it will. I asked Tom McNair, who's an incredible remote viewer, um, uh, about that. Why does that happen? And, we talked about the possible reasons and all that, but bottom line, it came down to a self-discipline to stay with the actual target. Okay, the actual target that you will see during your feedback session. That's what you've been tasked to do. But your subconscious says, yes, but I like the other target better. That's one of the excuses people always give. I disliked the feedback target, so I went someplace else. And there have been studies about that, where people will be shown these awful spiders or snakes, and they'll be given a choice to describe two pictures, and they'll almost always describe the other one, um, um, because they don't like ugly spiders and snakes, and other things like that. Hey, guess what? That's what you, as a remote viewer, need to train yourself to do. You need to discipline yourself to stay with the actual target, which is the one you'll see during your feedback session. And the feedback session is the perfect time when you can see where it's kind of your whole communication channel, your whole system, down to your deepest part of your subconscious. You've got many, many, many years of stuff that went on, but this is the opportunity to kind of work on that, learn how to set aside maybe blocks are there, or you need to communicate with your sub that even though you might like the other target better, hey, don't describe it during the time you're doing the remote viewing session. Stay on target. So, and this discipline is a free choice, and it only occurs in your now moments. But in fact, you are free to describe the other target. The subconscious has access to that. Okay, and here I want to, I think this is the last one in this segment. With the blue circle is the UCC with everything in it, everything physical, spiritual, everything in the broadest possible sense that conscious touches, knows about, which is basically everything. Now let's look at these things as events, okay? So you've had a lot of events in your life. Aren't you really happy that you can ignore a lot of them? I mean, imagine if in your brain they were all there as present as this now moment. So, we're designed to not have them have them with us all the time. Let the UCC have them. That's a good place for them to be stored. So you can decrease the entanglement with events. Now you can also increase the entanglement with events. We talked about this intensity in each of the events, but there's also an intensity in entanglement between events. Significant events in your life that you make them meaningful, they're important. I've had a lot of good positive emotions or negative emotions, tend to increase the kind of entanglement with your now moment and them. So now let's get back to ARV here. let's say one event is you doing your RV session. Okay, if you want to make that a pretty strong event, there's your feedback session and your target. Those are available over there. Time has nothing to do with this in the way we're talking because it's all about the entanglement. So the other event is you doing your feedback session. And they're entangled both ways. That's where the information um, comes from, the feedback session, but the RV session is where you put it on paper for the first time. Now notice how that cleverly got bigger. Your consciousness creates a type of handshake, and one of the quantum mechanical theories uses that word. You're creating a handshake with these two events and can enhance the intangible energy with discipline. And we know that because people are doing it now all the time, more and more. But guess what? Out there are other things, the other possible target. So do you have some inertia in you? What is your inertia for entangling with other things? And it might not even be the other target. It might be something in this session triggered a, in fact, we're going to see an example of that, a wonderful holiday that you had. And so you started describing the holiday. You can become aware when something like that happens. And that becomes the training, to become aware of those kinds of shifts. But the best is to not have to do that. The best is to be like Tom McNair, just have the discipline to stay with the target. Okay. That's that segment. And I'm pretty much on the schedule I would like to keep regularly. Questions and comments on this? Okay, let me see. So there is some chat box here. Let me catch up on it. Some people, how do you know when you are on target if you're getting perfect description in the field? I think you're covering this as I have been viewing the other target lately. Okay. You don't know. Okay, I'm looking at Malgoler's comment. You don't know it until the feedback session. But that's the time you kind of review things deeply and you then realize that that's what happened. And then I always like to say, have a conversation with your sub. See if you can, with your sub, figure out why you did that. But while you're doing the session, you often don't know. I think ultimately you can get to the point where you do, but beginners and moderate people who are still doing this description don't know it. And that's why they keep describing. And that's the challenge. That is, if you think about it, the challenge in ARV. Okay, some people in ARV can do session on correct feedback and also on, we see, so 2 sessions. Well, I don't know if anybody is doing that kind of on purpose and they can distinguish it that way. That would be interesting, Martin. But what people do that is a problem is they'll get a partial description of the target and a partial description of the other. So it's clear their subconscious was looking at both. What's so interesting about so much of this is it demonstrates to them that they're psychic. Sometimes the problem is they don't get, maybe I'll say, upset enough, angry enough. You don't want to get angry at yourself, but I think you know what I mean. They're sort of happy. Okay, hey, I have another demonstration that I'm psychic. Well, yeah, but you're not doing your task. You haven't learned the discipline yet to do it correctly. I find it difficult to discipline myself out of 100% what appears to hit me. Well, that's your challenge. And I don't understand exactly what you mean there, but you do. And we're now at the level with most of our viewers, once you learn the basic protocol, um, other people can give you nothing but relatively low level advice. And then what it comes down to is you taking responsibility for having this. First of all, saying, my God, it's kind of amazing that I can even do this at all. I feel wonderful about it. And you're doing this in a conversation with your sub. It's amazing that we're doing this together. Thank you, sub, for all that you do. And now let's see if we can get a little better at it. Let's see if we can bring some discipline into this in this particular area. Now we're talking about what we've and others have called displacement. Joe McMonagle hates that word. He says it's just a miss. There are a lot of different reasons for having misses. Why focus on that one? But we focus on it because in ARV, we just see it too often. I would much rather have a person, describe something that's not like the other person. Just get a quick pass. It doesn't match either picture, and then move on. Okay. You could try that first doing the positive session as you always do, and then do the negative on the wrong. Yeah, well, that would be kind of interesting. If somebody does that, please let us know. We have our discussion groups. I'd love to see, now for any of this to be meaningful, you need to do a fair number of them. You can't just do it once and, hey, look, it worked. I got a good description of both. But I can see potential value in that because now your sub knows it is going to describe the other one eventually. We actually had one protocol which did something like that, and it didn't work particularly well. We're all looking for a magic bullet, and I think the only magic bullet is finding it from a conversation with your subconscious. In spite of that, in the moment of choice, I do not know having so much data on incorrect. Well, yes, when you're doing your RV session, your job is to be a witness. Your job is to witness what the sub is giving you after you've tasked it. That tasking is basically to the subconscious, because the subconscious is what's connected to the UCC, and it goes and it knows the right answer. But it also has all this other information. And so ultimately, the higher level you that generates the transcript is a witness, and that's its job. And so the issue during the RV session of recognizing that you've gone off target, is a challenge. But people do that in CRV, controlled remote viewing. They train you when you feel something to take a break. And all of those kinds of things are advice that helps. But guess what? Not all CRVers are 90% ARVers. All of these things are good ideas. What you and your subconscious have to do is get a sense of what resonates with you and build on that. And if some of you want to try this idea, go for it. But it needs to resonate with you as opposed to just doing regular ARV sessions and really using the feedback session to learn. Yes, Tom's session is in our website under free webinars someplace. I hope you're in our discussion group, Lori. And if you're not, just send me an email and I'll get you in our discussion group. Julie Beeman does that. And in there's a specific way of getting it. Although, no, I am wrong. It was a talk with, so you have to be a full member. That basically means a paid member at $55 a year. But then you get access not only to his talk, but we've had probably by now maybe as much as 100 other talks with people like Dean Raid and Russ Targ. You get access to all of those. And you can be in more than one ARV group. And you're helping us with our mission to educate more and more people. Okay, call me Marge. Okay. Marge, thank you, because I did not make that connection. Yes, I get this 2-photo description very often leaking through. I'd love to learn discipline, and truly I'm a beginner, so no pride. That's wonderful. That's exactly the right attitude. And the way to learn it is practice, practice, practice. Use your feedback sessions to guide the conversation with your subconscious. And listen, during the RV session, the stuff that you're getting, it's coming from your subconscious. So just by doing the ARV, the RV part of it, you're getting a sense of how the information coming from your subconscious feels. So going into, it's almost a mini RV session where you ask a question of your subconscious and then get quiet and listen. And you might even have a piece of paper around and see what comes up, because you're going to have to work it out together. You're super psychic. You're just showing off by doing mistakes. And you want to know something? For each of us, there's a lot of truth in that, because, I don't like to use the word fear, but fear of success and fear of failure is one of the things which your subconscious might give back to you. I mean, if I'm really 100% at this, my life is not going to be the same. Also, do I really want to go through being really terrible at this and feeling terrible about myself? Some of those fears might stop you from being a super psychic, but it's your subconscious that's going to tell you that. Okay. Ruth, is it good information when in an RV session you get a value such as after a catastrophe when viewing a park at the place where Kennedy was shot? Okay. In an RV session you get a value such as... Well, this is touching on the issue that for almost all of us, we're not perfect. And so going back to a session like that and trying to find out what really happened with the Kennedy assassination, I think always has risk, because you generally can't get feedback. Now, if somebody really, really, really wanted to do it, maybe they would get a lead and then they could get hard evidence. And of course, that'd be kind of terrific. But in something as major as that, no. But there are other crimes where I think trying to get more information, giving it to detectives might be useful. In fact, Joe McMonagle finds missing persons with a 50% accuracy rate, which is rather incredible. He did a lot of this in Japan. There was a regular show there that apparently was very popular. And they would go back to these old, very old, like 25 years old missing person cases, give him probably just the name and maybe a picture. I don't know exactly, but, just minimal information. He would do a session and they would give it to detectives. And 50% of the time, the detectives would be able to find the missing persons. That's incredible. I mean, that's just incredible. So that idea is something which can be used. Thank you so much to seminars, and we're training many away groups, 3 targets a day or more. Okay, wait. Thank you. Thank you so much for these seminars. And we are training away groups, 3 targets a day. Yeah, okay. So sometimes you're doing 3 targets a day. Joe McMonagle really believed in practice, practice, practice. He did 1 remote viewing target a day, but when he did targets, most of his targets were the 30, 40 page kind of targets, not the 1, 2, 3 page targets that ARVers generally do. So yeah, feel free to do more than 1 ARV target a day. Well, thank you, and you're certainly welcome. In RV practices, I will skip seeing people, although I can smell them. That's great. Like I just did in your pick, and focus more on the mechanic or nature part of things. That's my own entanglement programming. I just get aware of this quirk, but I am a beginner. Well, first of all, the fact that you're aware that you do that in a psychic sense, in other words, you're matching that sort of thing well above chance, congratulations. The recognition of that is wonderful. And now go on to expanding that. That, in fact, in many ways, I believe, we all have this capability. It's built-in, natural kind of capability, lots of which has been suppressed. A lot which says, why bother? A lot of us are originally raised to not believe it. It's, bullshit, that sort of thing, for whatever reason. But when you get to where you're here, you now are past a lot of the blocks. And now your challenge is just to keep growing. When you do a feedback session, draw yes, you smelled it, give yourself good credit for that, but now possibly draw it, sense it in another way during the feedback session, knowing and intending to share that with your subconscious and say, hey, in the future, how about giving me a little bit more about the shape of the person, and that sort of thing. That's an example. People who don't do colors, the feedback session is a time for them to learn how to do colors. There's some sites that are dominated by the color red, and they just don't get colors. Well, that's the time for them to look at that feedback session and get red. And take the time during the feedback session. And we'll talk about more about that when we go on to feedback session. I'm a believer in relatively quick. Notice the 2 minutes. I don't know how that felt for you, but it's amazing how much you can get down on a piece of paper in 2 minutes. I think most people take between 5 and 10 minutes to do their cool down and session. Of course, you put something on the piece of paper and then you get quiet again and you go down, into your inner self, your sub, whatever you want to call it, and get more information. But I personally think 5 to 10 minutes is enough, sometimes more than enough, because I've seen so many sessions where a person feels they want to get more, and guess what they go to? The other site. Even though they've done a really good description already of the first site. And getting a sense of that is something, again, which hopefully you can develop, or going into more depth in some way with the target. Just don't ever leave the target. But I think 5-10 minutes after like a 5-minute cool down, where you get quiet, get rid of your day-to-day stuff, is about right. Though some people I know take half an hour cool downs because they think it takes them that long to get connected. So you have to work all that out for yourself. Overcome the mental chatter of doubt. So, okay, well, thank you for that. Ruth, at this time are actually viewing the photo after our recession of kind. So from this medium size, take us down. The photos are from the far side archives. Part was a photo. Well, I think you ought to just join us, Ruth, because again, just send me an email and you'll now have the ability to do in a group environment the feedback for the particular coordinate transcript reference number that you get. 30 target. Oh yeah, when they were in the military, Martin, sometimes these things would even be more than that. They take several days. They take a break overnight and come right back. But remember, they were asking, and Joe's missing person targets were multiple pages. He would give them like streets and shapes. Every now and then he'd get a name, but mostly it wouldn't be that. It would be, okay, this, and then he'd draw a major structure type as best as he could. You know, again, he wouldn't name the Eiffel Tower, but I don't know if any of the cases were in Paris, but he would describe and sketch a major feature in the city where the missing person is. And then he would draw streets. I mean, it's kind of amazing. It is. How good you can get with this when you stay with it is incredible. No personal trainer or sub. No, you don't need a trainer or sub, especially for ARV. If you want to get to where you do 30 pages, then there, CRV training classes you can take. Other people will give you training classes. There's some free ones out there, but I claim by doing ARV and just going to our free webinars, once you get over doing the protocol a few times, it comes down to just doing feedback sessions and learning from that. Yeah, just do 1 or 2 pages. Yep, the 5 to 10 minutes works. Now you have to realize if you really want to go get missing persons and stuff like that, then you develop the discipline to go further because you want to get more detailed information. But notice all we want is enough information to distinguish between 2 pictures. So we want the major features. Yesterday, I don't know which one you're talking about, but that happens sometimes. Even if you have people who are at 66%, and I've done the math on this, it's remarkable how often they will both agree, and it'll be wrong. You just have to accept the misses. What matters is over the long time that you're well over chance. And getting up to 66% is a good milestone. We consider the next milestone to be 70% and then 80%. That's what we're looking for. Strict unitary ARV. There are some examples out there about that, and I don't think they've shown to be any better than this. And for example, an example of a unitary ARV might be in a sports event, go to the locker room of both teams and which ones are happier. I just sort of made that up. But that'd be unitary, right? Well, it really isn't. There's always, I don't know, there's always the alternative out there in some way. That's my opinion. A guy named John Knowles has done a lot of work on this. And if you send me an email asking, I can get you in touch with him. Okay, let's move on to feedback now. And that was really good. That worked well to write questions and stuff in the chat box. I like that. In fact, I'm encouraging that now more and more. Rather than somehow talking, it just, you don't have time to quite say what you want as opposed to writing it. Okay. A month ago, we set out this tasking in a meeting just like this one. And you can see here for your newbies, everything is done, and we've worked over so many years now to make this as user-friendly as possible. And so we do most things with email and links. And everything is saved on our what's called a server, just a high-end computer. Um, so March 6th to the webinar workshop group, we sent out this tasking, and it said, will SPY, that's basically like a stock, but it's the Standard & Poor 500 divided by 10. And there's a group that buys and sells things to keep it very close to a factor of 10. And will it move up between March 6th and April 2nd? Okay. So that was the tasking. And then we give a start time, which was the 2nd, and then the transcripts were due on that day. And then all the person would do, anybody in this group, and this is just how our other groups work. So that's why this is all learned by doing. Just by watching this, you already know what our sports prediction groups do, what our financial predictions group. It looks exactly like this with just a different group name. All you do is click on that link to get the coordinate. In this case, just because I found it interesting, and I'm going to show you more on this, there were 3 predictions. And when you make a prediction, there's a box where you can put in what you think happened. This person, and I took out the person's name. You know, the ones who get it right don't care, but the ones who get it wrong sometimes get sensitive, so I just decided to do that. But this was a yes. This one was a yes, and this one was a no. So we had 2 yeses and 2 nos, so we went in the yes direction. And you can see they gave words here, and I'm going to come back to this one, which was a no, because this person talked about how much they enjoyed their tour. In other words, even here, they connected up with another event. It's a perfect example of going off target. And I'm actually going to show you. I'm going to show you that. Now, here was the price change. This is a graph of SPY. Down here was March 6th. Here's April 2nd. And you can see, you know, I don't have to do really anything to convince you that this was an up move. And you don't need to understand what these are, but they show you. I'm not even going to tell you. It was an up move, just because I want to get through this. Now, again, and I can never say this too often in my opinion, because this got to get so deep in your gut that you just know it, take it for granted as much as you do that the sun's going to rise tomorrow. You know it, you expect it. It's just the way the universe works. So the remote viewing and feedback entanglement begins with the feedback session. Here's something I found, and I like to use it. I give it no credibility in terms of a specific number, but someone was brave enough, and this was in the Minds Journal, that your subconscious mind is 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. So what your conscious mind is doing right now, in this conscious moment, 30,000 times more in your subconscious mind. So the idea that your subconscious mind is more powerful, that is a good idea to carry around with you and to learn to trust it, know it's your friend, all of those kind of good things. And in my opinion, it's actually an underestimate. Your subconscious mind is just everything. This issue I keep talking about and use the word entanglement goes way back to early quantum mechanics days. And remember, we're talking about it in terms of entanglement of ideas, entanglement of information, between the feedback session, where the target is known for sure, and the remote viewing session. But this comes from Dean's book, Entangled Mind, Dean Radin's book. One of the most surprising discoveries of modern physics is that objects aren't as separate as they may seem. When you drill down into the core of even most solid-looking material, separateness dissolves. All that remains, like the smile of the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland, are relationships extending curiously throughout space and time. These connections were predicted by quantum theory and were called spooky action at a distance by Albert Einstein. Einstein actually didn't believe this. In fact, he proposed an experiment that would disprove all of this, which only many years later after his death were carried out, and it proved that spooky action at a distance is indeed true. So that's sort of one of the interesting stories, because Einstein was not wrong on many things. One of the founders of quantum theory, Erwin Schrödinger, dubbed this peculiarity entanglement, saying I would not call that one, but rather the characteristic trait of quantum mechanics. Most of us in this field believe, even we don't understand it in any deep sense, that the ideas of quantum mechanics is what ultimately, and maybe it's going to take a more detailed model that will include quantum mechanics, because it's got to include consciousness ultimately. You know, my UCC does that, but not with any equations. But that ultimately, it's the ideas of quantum mechanics and the ideas of entanglement and information being able to travel almost instantly between places, and maybe instantly between two different places, and they've done experiments on this, will be the ultimate explanation. So quantum mechanics, I certainly believe, will be part of it. Okay, so I showed you the email tasking email, which is where it all starts in linear time. This is another email. This is the feedback outcome email. This one I just sent out today. Okay, and the feedback for the webinar workshop. Notice again, this will look exactly the same in any of the groups that you join. It repeats the event. Will SPY move up between 3.6 and 4.2? We now have the winning side being yes, and that's because now the computer, remember there were two possible targets, of course, the computer now will only give you, when you click this link, the correct target for your coordinate. Each person has a unique coordinate, and they have two possible targets and only one correct target, which they'll see when they click this link. Everything after this date, that's really their questions which come up, and this is like a database unique number that allows me to get in the database and find out everything. So this is the link. All I did was copy it here, so in fact I could click on it. But before we do that, let me show you what will come up. So maybe I can just click on it. When you click on it, it's going to ask you for your email address. And so, because again, all of this is unique to you. And notice, once you put in your email address, you click here for feedback, and up will come your feedback. So those of you who were here last week can do that, but what I've done is gone in, and what I'm about to, okay, so the message to get up to this point is, oh, okay, that sounds pretty easy. You know what? I haven't really heard anything that's going to scare me from doing ARV and focus on my ARV psychic precognition abilities. because the techniques and methodologies very quickly become routine. Um, uh, and that's important for you newbies to get. Okay, I'm going to show you all 3 transcripts that were done last month. So this is the first one, and here is the feedback target. So I had sent this out just today, so I don't know if anybody has done this, but they certainly can be doing it now with me on another piece of paper. But I think I'd like to let's take a look at this. And I haven't really had the time to look at this a lot, but notice it was a 4 and a 3, which means these are the confidence rankings. I'll tell you more about that later when we do our prediction. But the scale is 0 to 7. 4 says, yep, I feel pretty good about it. 3 says, nope. 3.5 is the place where I'd be willing to wager a few bucks on this if it was a sporting event, using that kind of metaphor. But they thought this was pretty good, and they in fact got a hit on it with the 4. So let's look at this. Color, dark, blue, black. You can see a good match there. No red. I think that's white. No yellow. Notice the AOL. I love it. Fabric. I don't know if there's fabric in there or not. It looks all metal. Crunchy, flapping. I think that's not bad because it's under sound. Remember the way the thing, I would say this was rather good. Certainly this is going to be flapping back and forth and the sound. So I like that. Taste, peanut butter and coffee. But notice the geometry here. Square and round. And this certainly has both of those. It's got, well, rectangular even. It's got a lot of rectangular elements and then certainly the round part of it. Texture, rough, ripple, earth. Well, there's some rough stuff there. Spike, sharp, floating, business, industry, hurry. So this is a mix. But notice the person gave it a 4 based on this kind of matches and got a hit. So I'm just trying to give you examples of what you would see at feedback. Okay, here's another one. And this is the one which was a miss. This was the target. And I actually looked at this one in detail because always there's more to learn from misses than hits. Remember that. There's more to learn from misses than hits. It's almost like the subconscious is trying to guide you someplace. Because notice here, got nature. I don't know if it's a summer day, but frankly it probably is because tornadoes and things like that love the heat. The colors, I think that looks a little orange or yellow. Certainly green, certainly blue. So look how much matches. In some ways, there are more matches here than the previous one. Magenta, even if you want to call that magenta, when I'm a judge, analyst, I don't like it to be so minor. I would give it a half point. Nature, summer day, hot, again, probably. Sunny, yeah. Easygoing, well, except for the tornado. But I don't know what I would do as a judge, and I don't know what this person did, but yeah, interesting. Floating. Now, floating is interesting because I would see this whole thing as being floating. And I don't know if you would, but that's always part of the challenges, whether you judge this yourself, as she did, and a lot of people are using independent judges, how they would count that. I would think that should be at least a half a point, maybe even a full point. Beach ball, of course, looks off. Happy, I would say, is off. Open space is right on. Whole thing is open space and outdoors. So if I were judging this independently, I would give this very high marks. The person who judged it only gave it a 2, thought the matches were random. But this was the person who said, I got the sensation of sailing. Now, that was probably all the motion here. Didn't put sailing down here, I don't think. I just wrote down floating. Okay, so here's floating, which I think is pretty good. But I felt like sailing, and the sensation of easygoing obviously doesn't match A. And okay, and I can see where they would come to that point, but everything else in there was easygoing. I think that picture B is of the channels in Amsterdam. I had the pleasure of taking the tour, and it's relaxing. It was a happy moment for me, so I will choose B. Learned, this is just an example, happened during judging, but the exact same thing can happen during remote viewing session. You get off target. I mean, your job here is to take every single element when you're the judge and to say, if this were the target, does it match or is it doesn't match? And there's so much that matched here that it clearly, in my mind, is not a 2. At a minimum, it's a 3, but I think it could be a 3.5. And I don't know anything else about how well it matched the other one. But because she took a tour in Amsterdam, I hope she learned, and all of you should learn, that would never be a good reason for giving it a high matching value, because that's what these confidence rankings are. This is the confidence of how well my transcript matched the picture, the photo site. And then here was the third one. Now this was a hit, and this is a 4 and a 2. Already I like when they're different, because it says, you know, she didn't get nearly as much on the other one, whatever it is. But notice here, and this was you, Marge, garlic, lemon. I would say the garlic is, pretty close. The leaves of this stuff are like garlic. This looks to me like it might be radish, but the fact that the taste she got was of food was really good. Smells, fresh air. Sounds, birds singing. She wouldn't give credit for that. Colors, blue. I don't see blue, but I certainly see green. And this stuff all looks gray. Textures, rough, yes. And smooth. Yeah, close enough compared to rough, maybe. Density, soft, harder on the top. So here we have the soft. Here's harder on the top. Wood, and I don't know what that word is. Stone structure. I guess underneath there may be stone. And then it seems to me she went someplace else. This is where I don't see this in here anywhere. But she felt, because of the other matches that we saw here, that it was worth a 4. And this is where the judging becomes so important. The fact that the very first thing which came to her was about vegetables was very strong. And fresh air, very strong, and certainly green and gray. So this is an example of feedback. Now, what should Marge or others do? And let me show you how I recommend doing feedback sessions. You can do some of it on your transcript, but I also now recommend you take a blank sheet of paper and I'm going to use a highlighter because I'll be able to see it. Okay. And on here and on the blank sheet of paper, you write the stuff you really liked. Okay? Garlic. was really, really good. And you're giving yourself a feeling really good about it. And you know what? The person who had the miss and the other person, they do exactly the same thing. If they, during their feedback session, would have noticed and should notice how much good stuff they had, that will help them next time when they do their judging. Fresh air, I think so. This is probably an out market. When you're judging, you wouldn't be as sure. But now that I'm here doing feedback, sure. Are there birds singing? I don't know. Again, I might give this like a half. But the green, yeah, that feels really good. Gray feels really good. I probably even would give birds singing, believe it or not, at feedback time, but not as a judge. And then the rough and smooth, absolutely. Soft, harder. On the top, I would probably circle that or do something really, really good on that, just like I might do that. Really giving myself and my subconscious, that's really good stuff. And stone and structure here. I'm just trying to see if maybe this is like this shape. And as a judge, I couldn't give it that kind of credit, but at feedback, I don't know. You know, this stuff is not like math, arithmetic, where you can learn it and it's just right. There are judgments involved, but I think you get the idea. So on a blank sheet of paper, I would repeat this really good stuff. And then on a blank sheet of paper, you want to add what you didn't do and what you wish you had done. So I'm looking at this, and the first thing I wish I had done if I were her was to draw a bunch of horizontal kind of lines with maybe little round circles at the other end. She actually described that pretty well. But imagine if there was a sketch that did that. And maybe the word multiple. I won't be able using this to do this, but write the word multiple down. Tastes good. Other things that come to you, and pause a little bit to share it with your subconscious. You know, I am munching on this right now. And I think it's onions, not garlic, but I think, but I can sort of taste it. And I want to taste it. I want to share with my sub the taste of it, both giving it the idea that next time, you know, if there's food, give me the taste of the food. And for example, this is what garlic tastes like. And one other thing that I tend to do with photos like this, where I think you'd agree the dominant color is green, and she got green, I would add dominant color green and really get into the green of this and how much green there is. So all of this is causing me to pay a lot of attention to the feedback, where it all begins, right? Precognition begins with the feedback. How did you get all this other stuff that you got? From here, okay? And now I'm just emphasizing it and emphasizing to my subconscious that I'm going to, in the future, always do stuff like this so that I will increase the entanglement with the remote viewing session. So that's the logic with all of this. And it really is important. Wait, let me turn off my clicker here. I guess it's hidden. Okay. In the original days at Stanford Research Institute, they did what were called outbounder experiments. And they would send out a person randomly. They wouldn't even choose the site until after the person was out of the building. The remote viewer was in the building with a monitor, and they would do a session. Sometimes they were actually precognitive in the real sense that the session would be done before they chose where they went. But most of the time, these things would be going on simultaneously. But there'd be no normal interchange at all, of course. These were really high-end scientists. But then they took them afterwards to the target site. So imagine the energy that they're putting into it. They drove to the site. They were discussing the transcript. I don't think they would say anything about the site because only the person that went there knew about it, and I think they would remain quiet to that until they got there. Um, but when they got there, they would obviously be quite happy with the matches. They were entangling the transcript and feedback target big time. I mean, they went physically out to the site. They could actually touch the things that were there. You know, if it were a market, they could taste those onions, that sort of thing. And that's what the whole idea is with the feedback with the photo sites, is to really get into it. Now, virtually everything I'm saying, which starts with consciousness is fundamental, Joe McMonagle sums up by saying it's all psychological. And it is. It's all within your psyche. And, you know, I give as many suggestions as I can how to get better, but ultimately, you cannot teach a man anything. You can only help him find it within himself. That was Galileo. You know, all this wisdom goes back forever. Now it's just being applied to precognition. That's the feedback segment. Let's see if you have questions. Why don't you put them in the chat box? that would be fun. You know what would be more interesting, just because, as you probably have gathered, I am pretty busy. Maybe we can find somebody else to do that. That would be kind of a fun thing to do. I actually have done it in the past. It obviously takes a lot of time. Plus, each of you can't go to the same place, living in different parts of the world. So what I did when I did it is I went there. So it was a semi-outbounder, but I knew both places. It wasn't a very good experiment. Okay. To show off superiority. Am I missing a statement here? Oh, those are onions, very much like garlic, exactly. I'm super onion psychic. I love it. And you know what? I think being a precogger increases your sense of humor. I love it. Okay. Might be the lines over the greenhouse design, maybe. You never know. I like that. 6 magnitude is not noted. I know that you always draw something else like the pyramid. I like pyramids. Yeah, everybody likes them, but don't draw them unless that's your target. Okay. Okay. So, I'm going to stretch a little bit. You might want to do the same. We've been going now for over 2 hours. But now we're about ready to go. If I can click on this, let's do a new prediction, which we'll do feedback a month from now, first Wednesday of May. So, and that's March 5th here, March 7th here. Okay, I've lost my mouse. There we go. Oh, because I said pointer, I've now lost my mouse. Okay, wait. I think that's because I said pointer options, pen, highlighter. What if I want to do nothing? automatic. Let's see if that works. Yeah, okay, I'm back. So a month from now is May 5th. I sent this out today, and this is a new prediction. Those of you who are actually in the group and your newbies, I will try to put you in the group. I've got to get your names, but so next time you'll be in a position to do this. One person who is in the group already gave me their prediction, but for your newbies and others, we're going to go through and you're going to do it here and now. And so this was the tasking. Will SPY, again, the S&P 500 divided by 10, move up between today and May 7th. Okay, so what do we do here? We click on this, and up will come a place to put your email address. And I'm going to give you in the chat box that link, so you will be able to do just what I'm telling you right now. Webinar workshop is marked. Here are other groups that we have. And then you would click, get your coordinate. You would get a coordinate. It's that simple. You put in your email, you click here, up would come your coordinate with your email address. Remember, your coordinate, which would be right there, 6-digit coordinate, 6-digit transcript reference number, would be right here. And then when you're done, you have to submit your transcript to the server. And when you do that and click submit, only then are the 2 possible targets even chosen. This is so designed that you can't even cheat on purpose. Your transcript goes up as part of the record. That's how I got the transcripts you saw earlier from our server. And there are 2 possible targets, because we won't know which one is the real one associated with up or down until next month. But the 2 possible ones are chosen from a collection of 800 prepared targets. So we have 800 choices. The computer randomly chooses one for you, which is now associated with this tasking and your coordinate. Okay. And then you get into the judging and all that. We'll do that later. So let me now go back here. And in fact, I'm now going to click on this because it's live. So it's just like you would do if you were there. And I'm doing this so I can copy this link. So this is the generic link for this particular tasking. Remember I told you about those numbers? It's in the tasking. This is what allows us with the server to do everything. Okay, so now what I want to do, and I had trouble with this one other time, I want to share this with everyone. That link. Oh, it's showing it going privately again. Hold on. I need to do it there. Okay, you will now get it. So somebody please acknowledge that you got it. But everybody should now have that link. Terrific. So you Oldbies, guys who have been around, and some of you I know just come to do these kind of sessions, you've got everything you need to proceed. So you'll get more time But the newbies, stay with me because I want to give you a little bit more information, and then we will go ahead and do, here, the one I want is this one. Okay, so some people are now got their coordinate and they're going ahead and doing a session. What I want to emphasize to all of you newbies who are still now staying with me are right now we're doing a preliminary to is what called cool down. You know, you're getting yourself ready to do your RV session as part of the ARV tasking. So it's always good to get yourself comfortable and remember intention, attention, and expectation are the three things that Joe Monaco, one of the best remote viewers around, done a lot of public remote viewing work. I told you about him with Japan. And Ed May, the scientist, probably involved with remote viewing longer than any other. He took over after Hal Puthoff left SRI, and he stayed with it, gone to other companies doing remote viewing. He's now compiled books that have all the documents that have been unclassified. So he's a biggie. And what they did is what's clear, at least to those of us on our long established team, is that intention, attention, and expectation play a very important role in the success of application and research. So right now, first in a general sense, just set your intention to really do a session that you're going to feel good about. You're going to be paying attention to your subconscious, and you expect to feel really good. You expect to get information entangled with the feedback session. And you know what your cue is going to be. Describe and sketch your feedback. Now, what I'm about to have you do is, so we started the cool down. Joe McMonagle really believes this cool down is very important. I indicated 5 minutes is about right to get rid of your day-to-day stuff. I'm going to give you just a little cueing, but I'm going to give you a total of 10 minutes. So use half of it to cool down and really set your intention well. So what I suggest you do now, you newbies, is click on that link. It will come up automatically. In fact, here, I can actually click on it. I'm going to click on it from the chat box. Yeah, you see it already has webinar workshop highlighted. So that's what we're in today. So all you have to do is put your name, your email address in here, because then it knows where to give you the prediction and the feedback link. So why don't all of you newbies do that now? And once you put in your email, you will get your 6-digit coordinate. Let me give you time to do that. There's something called HemiSync, which was used at the Remote Institute. And it's just kind of background. Okay, is anybody having difficulty getting their 6-digit coordinate? I'd like to start the 10 minutes after you're all with your coordinate. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to, um, again, you're in a quiet mode. Why don't you focus on your breathing? Focus on the breathing in, the breathing out. In the right now, feel as relaxed as you can be. Each breath relaxing you more. Any day-to-day thoughts that come to mind, just let them dissipate out of your consciousness. Breathe in and out. Set your intention to describe and sketch and say out loud your coordinate. And we'll say it out loud again at feedback time. So describe and sketch your feedback target.
Marty. Marty, please check the chat.
About a minute to go. You might quiet ask for just a little more information. Okay. Why don't you stretch a little? Come on back to your normal awake state. Okay. On. Okay, so you did it. You each have now a transcript in front of you. Someone clicked the submit and may have uploaded transcripts already, but let me explain all of that to the newbies. Okay, you remember this page. In fact, that's probably the page you have on your computer for many of you, which gave you your coordinate. Go back now to that page on your computer, and you first must click the Browse button here, and then will pop up a menu of stuff on your computer. And you need to take a picture. By now, most of us have smartphones or scanners, which will allow us to get our transcript on to our computer. And so then what you simply do is browse and bring it in. Here, maybe I think I can take it that far. I don't do a session, but I can put my name in here. So that will give me exactly the page we're talking about. Yeah, you're all hearing me. So you then click, okay, so this is where you got your coordinate. You then click Browse. And here is the files that are on your computer. And some people put it on their desktop. Some people put it in documents, temporary, but wherever you put it, that's the next key step. For some people, this is actually the hardest step if they're not computer literate. And I know somebody said that. No, Pat, I hope you should be able to do, if you have a transcript the next thing you need to do is get it onto your computer. Because once you now get it onto your computer, then when you click the submit button here, so this gets it on the computer for your coordinate, then you click submit, and the next thing that comes up is, well, what actually comes up is a picture of photo site A. Under that is photo site B. And then under that is what our next job is, which is to give confidence rankings for photo site A and photo site B. Well, the scanning, you don't send it to me. You send it to my server, if you will, using that Explore feature on your computer. You know, Macs and um, um, the regular PCs do it somewhat differently, but they both have a way of getting it onto your computer. You then search for it. You then search for it, and okay. Well, I some of you are okay with this. A few of you aren't. Maybe those of you who are having problems can tell me where you're hung up. I mean, this is the step where you have to go back to where you got your coordinate and first take your transcript and get it on your computer, either scanning or um, uh, again, most people nowadays are using a smartphone, and they might, okay, right, very good, Lori. So with your, right, that's right. You just take a photo of it. No, yeah. If you're having trouble, um, please express that in the chat box because others may be having a similar trouble. I also, yeah, you can certainly rename your photo. In fact, that's always a good idea. So when you come back, okay, so hopefully you all are doing that. I am going to go look at my server and I will be able to tell if some of you at least are submitting. And you can see this, what you're seeing is a screen which allows me yep. Okay, very good. Okay, so, and I can even see the names of the two possible targets that you guys have. And I can see some of you, one of you at least, knows how to do the confidence rankings. So I am going to assume the rest of that everybody is okay and has done this. And if that's not true, put something in the chat box. I would hate for you to kind of give up, because this is a time when if you can get through what we're doing here, then you're all ready to go ahead and do predictions in the groups. And sometimes for some people, uploading, that's what it's called, your transcript to the server is the hardest step. But once you've done that, what you should see, let me see if I can actually do that. Even though I didn't do a transcript, okay, I can do this. I'm going to show you. You probably, okay, so your transcripts are all submitted. So what I can do, hopefully, is actually submit what I call a dummy transcript. Let's make sure I'm in the right spot. Yeah, I'm right there. So I'm going to browse, and I didn't do a transcript, but for just this reason, I have a transcript that basically says this is a dummy transcript. As an example for what you can do. So I've uploaded mine, and then I'm going to click submit. Now remember, this is what you should do as your next step. And then when you do that, you will now see one of the two possible transcripts. And you now have your transcript. There's the second one. You'll be able to do that. Now, what do you do with that for your newbies? Oldbies kind of know already. And let me now show you. So this is what we've done so far. Now we're going to come up with the best association or a pass if there isn't one that's good enough. Now, how do we do that? It's all based for app on Russell Targ's confidence ranking system. He has a 0 to 7 confidence ranking system. 0 and 1 are no correspondence, little correspondence. 2 is roughly chance. You got a few things. If you were to count up where you think you got matches over all the things you put down, it might be 25%, 35%. You get close to 50%. Now you might think, it's a little more complicated than this, but we'll get to that in a moment. You might think that you're a 3. Now a 3 is pretty good. A 3 is where you said, you know what, I made psychic connection just on the margin. It's a mixture of correct and incorrect elements, but enough of the former to indicate that the viewer, you, has made contact with the target. But, again, that's just on the margin. We want 4s or 3.5s. People, this is subjective. And when you have a hard time deciding, often people will go in between. But a 4 is good correspondence with several matchable elements intermixed with some incorrect information. So you're not going to be 100%, but you got some, good stuff. And probably the matches, again, in that ratio is roughly 0.5 or more. Okay, now a 5 goes to the next level. When you give yourself a 5, you're saying you've got good correspondence with unambiguous, unique matchable elements, but still some incorrect information. again, Russ Targ tried to put in words these different levels, and you can see unambiguous, unique, matchable elements says not only did you match stuff, but it was matched to onion for garlic. That's pretty darn good. That was a good unambiguous match. Um, but still have some incorrect information. The 6 and the 7 get into this AOL, analytical information we were talking about. Like if you name it, you know how I said you're not supposed to name it? That's certainly not your intention. You use lower level words. Well, guess what? An AOL, you may have named the function of the target, or you might have even named the target. And by the time you get up to 6 or 7, there's relatively little incorrect information, and a 7, no incorrect information. So that's the TARG's basic system. And so right now, on your transcript, what I'd like you to do, I have an example here. And before we get into the analytics, the first thing you do is you should look at PhotoSite A, which was the very first one that came on. And I like it. A lot of people use different colors. So if you've got a red pen and a blue pen or something like that, you can use different colors just because it makes it easy for you. And each of these elements, which means each word, each sketch, you'll mark with either a capital A, which basically will count as 1 point, or a little a, which will count as a half a point. I think there's some matching there, but I'm just not really, really sure. And go through every element and mark it, because we're going to count that up versus the total possible. So why don't you just do that now? And then you'll go down and do the exact same thing for B. Lila here, notice she used a different color, but it just makes it easier for her because she's the one that needs to do the counting. And notice over here is where she counted them. And the total possible for her was 34, but obviously yours are going to be different. So let me just give you a few moments to do that, and then we'll talk about. Some people just use the TARG system directly. I always recommend you do this no matter what, and do the counting, because that lets you know which one is clearly not only the better one, but if it's good enough. Like this, she got a lot of B's, and you can see her ratio is well over half, 24 over 34. In fact, that was a 0.7. This is a very important, in fact, critical part of ARV, because here is where you are actually making the association with up or down, with yes or no. And it's all without any front loading. You don't know. In fact, I don't know which is which. Only the computer knows. That stuff is chosen randomly, but it is chosen. So once, like in this example, once Lila gave it a B of a 5, and then she hit down below, and we'll go there when she submits her confidence rankings, it will tell her, and similarly, you will know whether or not the prediction was up or down, because the association is in the computer. Yeah, I see what Ruth is saying. Um, okay, so now let me go. Um, I want to go back. So okay. So you've now judged against photo site A, against photo site B on your transcript, and you'll have something similar to what is here. Capital A's, capital B's, little b's. The next thing you want to do is work out these ratios. As an example here, I am showing Lila. She has 2434, which is 0.7. But Joe McMonagle really believes, and he's now convinced me, and this is what I recommend to everybody, that they actually use this approach just to help them get a confidence ranking with Russell Targ's approach, which those words still have enough vagueness in them. This, the only vagueness is, do you give it a big a little a, or nothing? But the basic idea from Joe is these first impression gestalts. Remember, we talked about examples of those. You know, like here, it might be white, mountain, is a shape like this shape. Notice Lila got this shape here. She got water. That's clearly a first impression. Green, land-water interface. There are things like that that when you just look at the picture for much less than a second, you know, they've done studies like this where they get down to milliseconds and the subconscious can pick up information. That's kind of the first impression gestalt, which I call a fig. So you get a fig for A, you get a fig for B, you do the ratio, and then the equation is right here. The equation is fig A plus the number that match A divided by the total possible matches. Okay, so you add those two together, and each of these are numbered between 0 and 1. For example, maybe your sense is that there are 3 figs here and the person got 2. You can make fig A 0.23. In this example, Lila really got enough of everything between the outdoors, the shape. She got green, you know, large, water. You know, what else could you get as first impression gestalt? A lot of times, all of this comes in, and for her too, she happens to do stuff down here first. Her style is rather unique to her. But notice here, she got the shape and she got the water first thing. Okay, so those are two major gestalts, and the gestalts do tend to come in first. And so in this example, we gave her a 1. So you do the same. So with CRB using the real numbers, it's just 1 fig B plus the 0.7, which is the ratio of 29 to 34, times 3.5. So since each of these can only be between 0 and 1, the highest you can get is 7. In this example, it came out to 5.95. She gave herself a 5. It turns out that from other studies, before we use this approach, just using Russell Targ's and people's independent judgments on the same figures, the difference between different people was typically about 1. So this worked at that level. And so this is the formal formula, fig plus the ratio times 3.5. So each of you can do that. Some of you who just, I don't know, hate numbers can come up with the fig between 0 and 1, simply add that to the ratio. You should be able to do the ratio of the number of A's to the total, number of B's to the total, and add those two together, and you could look on a chart like this. And remember, ultimately, what you are doing is telling the analyst, you're now acting as the analyst, and you're saying, as the analyst, I believe that this is how good this match is in words. So a 5 was the unambiguous unique. The 5.6 is up here, naming the function of the target. We're not too literal about having to do the naming, like if it came out to be a 6, like it did in this example, but you're certainly saying it is good with a 7, very good, bigger than a 5. So now the next step, the next step is to put it in. Let me go back now. One of these days, I'm going to make this a little bit smoother, but I'm still working on it. This is where you should be on this page. There's photo site A, there's photo site B. Below that are both. Some people just come right here, but I really don't recommend that because you want to go element by element on each picture. And as soon as you start taking shortcuts, you come back later and you see you made a mistake. So I really recommend doing it the way I said. The first one, the second one, now you come down here. It's worth going over your stuff again, doing your arithmetic, and then finishing off the analysis phase is a matter of putting in the CRs that you want. Now for me, I'm going to put all of them below 3.5 because this is just an example, okay? But and then you click submit. Again, the online protocol is pretty straightforward, with the one exception for some people getting the picture in. But after you finally manage that, then all of it becomes very straightforward. You then click submit. So some of you are probably ready to do that. And it repeats. This is just an example. You've got your coordinate, CR for photo site A, CR for photo site B. And in my case, it said my prediction is a pass because neither of these are over 3.5. But notice, if you were over 3.5, it would tell you yes, no. In this case, remember, we asked the question, will the SPY be up in the next month? And right here, it tells you what those randomly associated thing was. And in this case, it was no for photo site A. No, I said that wrong again. Wait, photo site A was randomly yes associated with no, and photo site B was associated with yes. And it repeats the event and stuff like that. But you're now done. And everything now has gone to the server. And let me see, I suspect more of you have now, in fact, done that. What did I do here? Oh, I see. Let me just get them all. Well, you know what? I'm going to do it even more directly. I'm going to do grep webinar. That's us. And then I'll do grep CR. This should give me all of the confidence rankings. Yeah, see, that's all I want. I'm sorry, but this is the way you communicate with this. So I'm going to do it. Grep. I don't know why. Oh, maybe it did give me all of them. Grep. I see. Grep webinar. www. You know, it's amazing how much harder it is to just do simple typing when the world is watching. And then grep CR. Okay, so this is all of them. And now I just want to find the ones from today. And okay, so it looks like Marge is first. And so I have 1, 2, 3. Oh, I have a lot. Oh, did you do 2, Marge? Oh, no, that's 2, 6. There you go. 4, 3 is today. Okay, so it looks like we have a lot. Good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, excellent. Excellent. So it looks like most of you are okay. Is anybody having a serious problem? But I just think because of time we should move on. However, I want you to know that if you contact me privately, for example, I will be happy to take you through how to get a copy of the transcript onto your computer and what to do from that step if that's where you kind of got lost. Now, how can we look at some of these? You're now going to see something which you would never need to see for any other reason except a full disclosure webinar. So what I'm doing now is the group manager. And this is what I do for several groups now. Each of you have made your own individual personal prediction, but I always make a group prediction like you saw before with 2 out of 3. So you're now going through that. I just want to, yep, this is the one from 4-3 to 5-7. These are earlier predictions. And now what I have available to me is your transcripts and your 2 photo sites and some summary. Let's look at the summary information. So Lori K, if you don't mind, I'll call you that. The order of this stuff is sort of strange and only meaningful if you go through a long history, which we will not do. But notice what she did. She predicted side 2, which was yes. And there's another side 2, and I love they put in words. And let me just see. Okay, for the webinar, for a lot of the groups, I have a summary of how many people were up and how many people were down. Here, let's just do it quickly manually, but then I want to look at some of the individual ones. So let me just do this manually. Okay, for side, well, yes and no. Okay, so we have 1 yes there. The second one is a pass. The third one's a pass. The fourth one's a pass. The fifth one is another yes. That's a second yes.
Excuse me, Marty, you missed the second one. That's a yes. Marge,
Ah, thank you.
you're welcome.
I love that you're all doing this with me. Wonderful. Thank you, Lila. Another pass, another pass. Okay, now let me make sure I'm counting right. I got one yes, two yeses, a pass, a pass, a pass, three yeses. Okay, and that's where I am on my sheet. Another no, another yes, a pass, another yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, and another yes. Okay, so if I counted right, and some of you, including Lila, please check me. I got 6 yeses and 2 nos. So at the first blush, it makes it clear which way we're going to predict. But also the fact that there's a 6 here, okay, and that's Elizabeth, and a 4.5. And let me look at the 2 no's. There's a 4 here for a no. And where's the other no?
I only see one no.
Okay. You know, I don't like certain aspects of me. And that is, I only see one no right there now.
Yeah.
I actually go back and correct everything. Okay, so there's one no, and it's a 4.5, which is pretty good, but there's only one of those. So clearly we're going to do, yes is going to be our prediction. So I can say that now. I'm putting this on my notes here. Okay, so the yes is a prediction. And on that other form, we'll put that there eventually. However, let's now take a look at some of these. It's always fun to look at sixes. So let's take a look at Elizabeth. And there's Marge. There's CRF. And there she is. Okay, so you see right here, here's Elizabeth. And I have access to her transcript and both photos. And she, yes, was side 2. So let's just open up. Let's just open up first her transcript. Okay, so to rotate this, I think I have to go to my, I wish there was a rotation up here. Now I have to go to my Snagit, which can rotate things very easily. Just because we don't want to have to crank our necks. Okay, so there's Snagit. So what I'm going to do is capture that. Okay, come on, come on, come on. I've got so many things open that things are going slowly now. There we go. Okay. There. To there. And then I have to open up the editor. oops, which was up. Image. Well, rotate. Okay, so we have that there. And in fact, now let's see what we can do about. Oops, I think it was this one. Yeah. So there she is. And now we said yes was side 2. So that was photo side B. And we can now see that. And let me bring that over here. There you go. Elizabeth, are you still with us? Okay, but I will look at it and see. Well, okay, first I look quick, reel down, and I tend to like sketches because if you think about it, sketches don't come from the analytical mind. And so I certainly like that a lot. The circles, it's round. Well, there's certainly a lot of round stuff. Eyes, nose.
Marty, we can't see your session.
Why? You're not seeing my screen?
I'm seeing the picture of the otter, but not her session she did.
Really? You're not seeing the Snagit editor then? Wow.
It's behind the picture.
Can you slide the photo site?
Okay, so you're not seeing it either, Lila.
No,
if
I'm seeing what the other person is seeing.
Yeah,
Okay.
slide the picture of the otter, slide that window over to the right. I think her session is behind it. Or are you seeing them side by side?
I'm seeing them side by side, and this is the first time that's ever happened that way. Let me see.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, that's sort of interesting. Let me see if I can fix it this way. Did you see anything just move?
No.
So you don't see the Snagit editor then?
Well, I see the Snagit editor, but it's behind the window with the otter picture.
I don't even see are you seeing the otter picture now?
Yeah.
Okay, very, very strange. Okay, let me try to beat this by opening another one, which I know you can see because I've used it before. It's the other snippet. That's this thing. This is the Microsoft snipping tool. Are you seeing the snipping tool now?
No, it's still the same thing.
Wow.
Maybe if you minimize everything and then.
Yeah. Let me. It may be my computer is having serious problems here because, as I say, I've got a million things open. You're not seeing any change then, is that true?
That's correct.
Ah. And yet I'm hearing you. This sounds like it might be related to Zoom. Okay, let me shut. This has never happened before. I'm going to turn off my email, which is a use of a lot of stuff. And I'm even going to turn off this PowerPoint here. Discard. Let me know when you see anything changing on your screen. I'm closing my Excel. Still nothing. Okay, I'm going to exit out of my
What if you turn off the
server.
screen?
Are you sure you want to close this? I'm turning off here.
Can you turn off the screen sharing and turn it back on? And maybe it would refresh.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yes, I can stop share. I'm now seeing me. What are you seeing?
That went away, and now I just see you and all of our names.
Okay. Now let me get back where I can start sharing again. And that's here. So I will now share. And I'll share my main screen. What do you see now?
I see her transcript now.
Oh, and you don't see an otter.
Correct.
That was a very good idea. Who am I talking to?
Jack Overheiser.
You come to all of these, please.
I try to.
Okay, so now I just have to find the otter, and we'll have both of them. Yeah, see, that was the Snagit one. Okay, so where are you, otter? Well, you're probably one of these. Oh, you're probably right there. No, that's that transcript. Let me close that one.
There's
Whoa,
the other.
that was easy. And I thank you all for your patience. Okay, so we've got the otter, and let me see if I can. Well, you know what? I don't want to fool around too much more. You've got what we need here. So when I was talking about the turtle, now you can see it right down here, right? You're with me? Hi. Did I lose any of you?
No, I
You're with me. Okay, good. So
We
there's
I
our
see everything.
good. So now we're back. Look at the turtle, and she wrote lake, turtle, wildlife. You talk about a GIF, that's really good. Now it's not a lake, but it's obviously got the water and all of that stuff. So that's really good. Describe, sketch your feedback. Yes. The twirling sort of connects with the, well, probably the movement. I don't know how she judged this, but I know she gave it a 6. I don't see Elizabeth here. But that's fine. Let me see. Shiny, watery. Okay, so again, the GIF, shiny, reflection. Well, she might have taken that to be shiny. What do you think? The white? Jungle, green tree, moisture, cool, oral, smell, fresh, yes, and moisture. So this is so good. You know how I said you do a big A or a little a? Sometimes there's a huge big A, which you give more points for. So I think Joe's point count maybe might not have gotten her up to a 6, but it certainly would have gotten her up to a 4 or a 5. So I don't know what the rest of you think now that you're seeing it. Do you think that was deserving of a 6? Those of you that have some experience in this?
No, I think 4 or 5 would have been more appropriate for it.
Yeah.
Maybe a 4.5.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I think, just mentally doing the arithmetic in Joe's place. But
And turtle is great.
yeah. So that's really good. Okay, very good. So let's maybe, what time is it? 3:25. I just think it's worthwhile if I can find it, and you seem to be all staying. So to do the one that's a miss, because my statement is you learn more. Well, of course, I don't know it's going to be a miss, so that's not fair. That's not fair. Okay, you know what? I think we're getting close to the end here, and it's time to stop. So let's go down to, yeah. So here we are. And we've done this. And we just now put in the CRs. And now into my closing remarks, and based on everything that we've just done and the things I've said, I almost show this one as a closer because it's just brings everything together, and it focuses on the fact that it's all about you. You know that expression, it's all about you? Well, in fact, it is all about you. Guess what? You're the remote viewer. You're the person doing the feedback. You're the feedbacker. And it's you who makes the entanglement between these two sessions. And practice, practice, practice. Using your feedback session really allows you to get the discipline to get better and better. We see people getting better and better. Now, not everybody gets up to where their hit rate, is 90% or anything like that. But I wish I could get people like Joe McMonagle. I've tried, and Tom and others to play, because I think they would be up at that level. But I think they clearly recognize that this is a very personal endeavor, and you do it yourself. And when you get up to a high enough level, you can become a professional precog. That's what APPI is all about, and trying to train people to get better and better at this, and to be willing to use the discipline, and to be willing to recognize that they have the capability, but it takes discipline. Sometimes people might use the word blocks that are stopping them, but all of that can be uncovered by opening up a dialogue with your subconscious. So this point that ARV begins with the feedback session is just so true. It's causing what is now called in the community, and this is the scientific community, retrocausality, because it's starting here and going backwards in time. So they have conferences, retrocausality conferences. It's really kind of remarkable, because this is beginning to move more and more into mainstream. And I really believe it's our generation and people like you who get better and better at this that's really going to help us get into a consciousness paradigm shift. And that's along with a lot of other people that are doing a lot of other kind of work, both in the psi field, healing field, all of that. Now, what you want to do, of course, is encourage, I mentioned emotions, but we didn't talk too much about it in this webinar, but you really want to feel very positive and loving about all of this. You might be connected with something which is a negative scene. We try not to have the terrible negative scenes, but, negativity is different with different people. But that doesn't mean you can't have a loving feeling about the fact that you're doing all of this, the fact that you're listening to your own deep subconscious that is at least 30,000 times more powerful than your conscious mind. You are right at the cutting edge of science, psi work, and you should really feel really good about that. And then knowing you have freedom of choice with discipline to remain on target. That's what you're working towards more and more. And we summarize all of that up into a simple hit rate curve, which you can follow over time and learn so much from all of your feedback sessions and your hit rate curve. So with that, I'm going to use this close, which in a very real way, I believe is what we're doing is all about. It's healthy. It is healthy at the level of consciousness is fundamental about your mind, which guess what? Affects your body. I've done webinars and workshops on how precognition and self-healing are so closely related. So you really are learning about health, and not only in the obvious ARV way, but in healthy connections with your physical body is a very small step from the healthy connection with your mind. And wealth. Being in this field, you very quickly get a much stronger sense of the connectivity between the other people who are pretty much like you, who have these same capabilities, who understand in their own way this idea of a universe of collective consciousness which binds us into one. Ultimately, it's spiritual. And I'm not sure I used that word before here, but what we're doing here is really spiritual. You're getting down to the deepest levels of reality. We are one. It's what the universe of collective consciousness. It's the ultimate oneness. And wealth, the original word of wealth included wheel, which basically meant sharing with the community. And that feeling, everybody that stays in this for a while seems to want to do that. They seem to want to share. Many people give 10% of their profits to a charity of their choosing. That's that sort of thing. And the wisdom of what we've talked about, I hope is clear to you, because this is all showing a step up in terms of the way the universe is viewed. The fact that consciousness is fundamental by itself, for most people, is a big step forward. But the fact that psychic phenomena fits in there and comes sort of out of this, it just gives a wiser feeling to you automatically. Okay, so with that, I'll thank you all for being here, and I'm now open for any other questions or comments.
Marty,
Yeah.
this is Lila.
Hi, Lila.
I find you terrifically inspiring. Thank you so much. I love listening to you.
Well, Lila, thank you for that. That really feels good.
Yeah,
So yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, very good. So let me now simply close this, and I'll end the meeting for everybody. And all of us, let's keep precogging. All of you take care and be healthy, wealthy, and wise.